That was I thought watching myself on video was the most embarrassing thing ever, and that intro definitely was up there. But I appreciate it. It was very perceptive, but as things that, seeing yourself is always it's a struggle too. So I work here at the law school. I'm a copyright lawyer, and I work at a public interest IP program, and so I spend a lot of time talking to people in the education community about copyright law, about open educational resources, which Barbara talked about this morning. And more than just talking to people about them, I try to convince them that those things matter and they should care about these sort of technical questions. And so yesterday in the opening exercise, when Ashanti said, you have to care more about your students than you care about the subject you're teaching, that you have to care more about those people and their experience than you do about sort of getting what you want out of the interaction, I think that really struck me because, I come in knowing what I think about copyright law. I know what I think teachers should do. I know what they should do about fair use and about OER. But if I don't really invest in understanding what they're doing in the classroom, like what their teaching challenges are, what they care about, what their students need, then I'm sort of wasting everybody's time. And so when I first started going around and talking about this, it's really easy to start from my own perspective and to say, okay, so I'm going to talk to you about flexible limitations and exceptions to copyright, and then I'm going to tell you about the Berne Convention for the Protection of Literary Artistic Works, and then if we have time, we're going to talk about the 4 fair use factors. And you can just see like the phones come up, the eyes go down, and you've just lost everybody, because that's not what they care about. They don't care about copyright. Shocking, I know. They don't care about OER, and so I think the thing that has been most important to me is to think about this from a design thinking standpoint, but from the idea that empathy is the important part of that, not the app. That, if you're thinking about design thinking, that it's about understanding who the people you're trying to help or who the people you're trying to reach are and what matters to them. And so, in this world of copyright and OER, it's a lot about giving access to information, about high quality materials, and about low cost. But I think the thing that I have to do, and the rest of us in this sort of tiny, nerdy advocacy world have to do, is put teaching first and put all of the technical questions about copyright or OER second. And I think what that means is identifying what in your sort of ideal world, what would you teach? Like, what's important for you to teach in that class? What's important for your students to learn, and what is the best possible way to do that? And to do that first, without thinking about the constraints. I think this is true for the copyright work. It's also true for the what would you teach if you weren't having to teach to the test? Or what would you teach without whatever these other constraints are in that moment? And so when I talk to people about copyright, a lot of it is I can do this, but not that. I can show like 2 minutes of that video, but not 5 minutes of that video, or I can use this piece, but not that. And in the work with teachers and with educators, what we're trying to do is say, put teaching first. What would you use if you weren't worried about access to materials or copyright or what was in the textbook you already had? What would you teach? Like, what would be most convincing to your students? What would be the most effective? And start there and really focus on the teaching purpose. And then back out and say, okay, how can we do that? Because I think in these situations, there are solutions if you put that purpose first. If you say, I need to teach this, because this is what I need to tell my students about history. And then say, okay, so that's what I need to do. How is that? How are those materials available? So in the US, fair use is really powerful. Fair use lets you use something if you need it for the educational purpose and you're using it in different context. And it's really closely tied to the First Amendment. And the way these two ideas work together is to say, we're not going to let copyright law keep you from being able to teach your students the things you need to do that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can take anything and everything for any purpose, but it says think about your teaching purpose first. And I think this also relates to what Barbara said this morning about we're never going to convince everybody that open educational resources are valuable by trying to convince them that open licenses are really cool. There's probably about 100,000 people in the world who think open licenses are really cool. We probably maxed out. Like, that's probably how many people are going to care about that. And so, we have that little tiny fan base But to, I think, make the work we do valuable and relevant to the rest of the world, we have to go out and say, what do you care about? Like, do you care about, you know, teaching biology that uses examples of plants and ecosystems that your students have actually seen, right? Do you care about just the pictures of like flowers and trees and stuff being like the stuff they see and not like the idealized, you know, maple? Or do you care about teaching history that is a history of your area and the history of the people you teach? And so put that teaching purpose first, and then build materials that are responsive to that. I think one of the other things that this meeting has really pushed me to do is be a little critical of how we do the work. Because I think how many people here have worked in an advocacy campaign where you're trying to convince people to do something? And so I think it can be really, standing too hard for the mic, sorry, thank you for the hint. It can be really easy to work hard to convince other people that they should care about what you care about. And I think the lesson here has been, say, no, I'm gonna care about the thing that's your issue. So I'm gonna care about doing a better job of what you are working on and try to figure out how my issue can help that. So for us, we're all focused on these high quality, open educational resources. We say what you want to do is create high quality materials, put them out under these open copyright licenses so anyone can use them, and then all your problems will be solved. That has not been the perfect strategy. And so I think, you know, what we have to say is, okay, you care about having really representative, really responsive materials for your school. We just say, how can we help you do that? Not how can we help convince you to care about our topic. So I think, I hope that's been useful. I don't have as inspiring a story to close with. Copyright is, I think, only infrequently inspiring, which is why I hope it can help enable other people to not see it as a barrier and not see something that stops their work or stops their planning or stops their big ideas. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.